Jaya Rama Rama Kunja Vihari Jaya Rama Rama Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jagannath Girivaradari Yashodanandana Bhajanana Yamuna Tira Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Puri Brahmanacharya Shri Srimad Divine Grace. Esse batido na sua Vishnu Prabhupada. Iskandacharya Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Puri Rajagacharya Satarya Srila Srimad Srila Bhakti Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Gita Gaura Premanande. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuramilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurue Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Sri Guru Sri Yatapadakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sta Sri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakadvitam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopaka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Visubhanu Sute Devi Paramami Haripriye Vancha kalpatarvishta kripa sindhubhye vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mareka Bando Matsangin Madguru Madmadana Madnistaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namostite Asadu Sadu Tadaya Natini Chochatakara Hanamuncha Kara Chinmam Premna Hritkatayo Spuraha Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devyam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. Hare Krishna, everybody. We'd like to welcome our guest. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4 today, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 31, Narada Muni instructs the Chetas, chapter text number 11. Shrutena tapasa vakyam
Shrutena tapasa vakyam.
vacho bishchita vrittibhi
Vacho vishchita vrittivi.
buddhya vakyam nipunaya
Buddha vakyam nipunaya.
malendriya radasa.
Valendriya radasa.
Shrutena tapasa vakyam
Shrutena tapasa vakyam.
vacho bishchita vrittibhi
Vacho vishchita vrittivi.
buddhya vakyam nipunaya
Buddha vakyam nipunaya.
malendriya radasa.
Valendriya radasa.
Shrutena tapasa vakyam
Shrutena tapasa vakyam.
vacho bishchita vrittibhi
Vacho vishchita vrittivi.
buddhya vakyam nipunaya
Buddhaya vakyam nipunaya.
malendriya radasa.
Valendriya radasa. Shrutena tapasa vakyam.
Shrutena tapasa vakyam
Vacho vishchita vrittivi.
vacho bishchita vrittibhi
Buddhya vakyam nipunaya.
buddhya vakyam nipunaya
Valendriya radasa.
malendriya radasa.
Shrutena tapasa vakyam.
Shrutena tapasa vakyam.
Vacho
Malendriya.
vishchita
Vachobhishchita vrittibi. Buddhyavakyam nipunaya. Malendriya radasa. Shrutena tapasa vakyam. Vachobhishchita vrittibi. Buddhyavakyam nipunaya. Malanendriya radasa. Synonyms. Shrutena, by Vedic education. Tapasa, by austerities. Va, or Kim. What is the meaning? Vachobhihi, by words. Chitta, of consciousness. Vrittibhihi, by the occupations. Buddhya, by intelligence. Va, or Kim. What is the use? Nipunaya, expert. Balena, by bodily strength. Indriya radasa, by the power of the senses. Translation. Without devotional service, what is the meaning of severe austerities? The process of hearing, the power of speech, the power of mental speculation, elevated intelligence, strength, and the power of the senses. Please repeat. Without devotional service. What is the meaning of severe austerities? The process of hearing. The power of speech. The power of mental speculation. Elevated intelligence. Strength. And the power of the senses. Srila Prabhupada's purport. From the Upanishads, Mundaka Upanishad 3.2.3, we learn Nayam Atma Pravachan. Nayamatma pravachanena labhyo na medayana bahuna shrutena yamevasa vrinute tena labhyas tasyaisha atma vrinute tanum swam. Our relationship with the Supreme Lord is never advanced by simple study of the Vedas. There are many Mayavadi sannyasis fully engaged in studying the Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, and Upanishads. But unfortunately, they cannot grasp the real essence of knowledge. In other words, they do not know the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What then is the use in studying all the Vedas if one cannot grasp the essence of the Vedas, Krishna? The Lord confirms in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Vaidashta Sharvir Aham Eva Vedya. By all the Vedas I am to be known. There are many religious systems wherein penances and austerities are greatly stressed. But at the end, no one understands Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is therefore no point in such penance, tapasya. If one has actually approached the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he does not need to undergo severe austerities. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is understood through the process of devotional service. In the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, devotional service is explained as Rajaguyam, the king of confidential knowledge. There are many good reciters of Vedic literatures, and they recite works such as the Ramayana, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes these professional reciters manifest very good scholarship and exhibit word jugglery. Unfortunately, they are never devotees of the Supreme Lord. Consequently, they cannot impress upon the audience the real essence of knowledge, Krishna. There are also many thoughtful writers and creative philosophers, but despite all their learning, if they cannot approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are simply useless mental speculators. There are many sharply intelligent people in this material world, and they discover so many things for sense gratification. They also analytically study all the material elements, but despite their expert knowledge and expert scientific analysis of the whole cosmic manifestations, their endeavors are useless because they cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As far as our senses are concerned, there are many animals, both beasts and birds, who are very expert in exercising their senses more keenly than human beings. For example, vultures and hawks can go very high in the sky. but can see a small body on the ground very clearly. This means that their eyesight is so keen that they can find an edible corpse from a great distance. Certainly, their eyesight is much keener than human beings, but this does not mean that their existence is more important than that of a human being. Similarly, dogs can smell many things from a far distance. Many fish can understand by the power of sound that an enemy is coming. All these examples are described in Srimad Bhagavatam. If one's senses cannot help him attain the highest perfection of life, realization of the Supreme, they are useless. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shandivadi Paschatade Shatade. Water. The warmth from the water is very nice. So, similar to yesterday's verse, Diro spoke very nicely yesterday about the faultiness of everything in this world if it doesn't bring us to our ultimate end, our ultimate goal. And he quoted that verse, Dharma swanishtita pumsam vishvakshena katashiyaha notpariyad yatiratim shrama eva kevalam. That all of the things we do in human society, Dharma swanishtita pumsam, all of our human dharmas, vishvakshena kata, that if they don't bring about this rati, this attachment to the message of Vishvakshena, personality of Godhead, if they don't bring about attachment to this message, an understanding of this message of Krishna consciousness, then those activities are Shrama Eva Kevalam. Why are they Shrama Eva Kevalam? That's the question. Why are they useless if they don't bring about attraction or attachment to this message of Krishna? Yes, Mother Sundamani. Mother Sundamani.
I just think that's the whole purpose of all this.
Yeah, but what if someone, I mean, that's true. It is the purpose of Vedic literature, but still, even if someone's just doing Dharma or doing whatever activity, what if they don't know about the Vedas? Why is it still useless? Because even if someone doesn't know the Vedas, we're hearing here that still they can know Krishna.
Karma.
Because if one is doing anything in human society, whatever it is, whatever activity they're doing, if they don't have the realization of the message of Krishna, then they're going to be absorbed in that which is temporal, and therefore they're going to have to take birth again. They're going to have to die again. They're going to have to get diseased again. They're going to have to get old again. And so when one doesn't have a understanding of spiritual consciousness and spiritual enlightenment, then what happens is they absorb themselves in that which is temporary. And because they're absorbed in that which is temporary, they're pulled by their senses and by their mind back into the material world to take birth in a body based on their karma. And so that activity doesn't value us because we can understand just logically that anything we're doing in this world ends at death. Correct? We can gain so much knowledge, we can gain so much education, we can gain so much money, we can gain so much beauty, we can gain so much fame, we can gain so much strength. But at the time of death, all of those things are going to be removed from us. So when we base our understanding on the fact that we're not this body, that we are the soul within the body, and that we're an eternal living entity, then in that case, we have to act on the eternal platform. So unless someone has attachment to the message of Krishna, the understanding of this Krishna consciousness, then all of their activities will inevitably bring about a negative result. Even if that result appears to be positive in the beginning, which is positive in the beginning could mean that one is having money, one is having fame, one is having gratification of the senses, but ultimately all those things are going to end in death. They're going to end in being taken away from us. And we're going to have to take birth again, and we're going to have to die again. So therefore, all of these activities are, in the ultimate sense, hurting us. So with that being said, I don't want to kind of re-give the class that Dhira Prabhu gave yesterday. We want to talk about Maya, because this is basically what this verse is saying, is that all of these things, without understanding Krishna, without devotional service, without the process of bhakti, without having this love and this emotional attachment to God in our heart, and without becoming enlightened, severe austerities, the process of hearing, the power of speech, the power of mental speculation, elevated intelligence, strength, and the power of the senses, they become useless. They become worthless when they're not connected to this supreme understanding. So there's a misconception about Maya. Someone can say, when someone is hearing, what is Maya? What is Maya? Can we get a definition of Maya from the devotees, from the Lord? Illusion. Okay. What is illusion?
Something that's temporary.
Okay. Anything else?
Something that's not what it appears to be.
Yes. The definition of Maya, or illusion in terms of the Vedic understanding, is that which is not. And so I think there could be a misconception about Maya, because someone sometimes can say, oh, Prabhu, you're married, you're in Maya, you're this, you're in Maya, you're working, you're in Maya, you're this, you're in Maya. We hear this type of thing, no? And everything that's not me is in Maya. Sometimes devotees have that consciousness. Oh, you're in Maya, you're in Maya. But actually, I was just contemplating, it's not that any of these things are Maya. And actually, even the material world, in a sense, is not Maya. Prabhupada explains that it's not fake, it's not false. Material world is not a false place. It's a real place, but it's a temporary place. And so the example given of a pot, it's that the pot is, in a sense, temporary. The pot started as earth, it became a pot, and then when you break the pot, it's going to become earth again. So the form of the pot is temporary, but the substance is not. So in that same way, the entire material world, which is manifesting various forms, shapes, circumstances, all of the 8 elements of material existence, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, all of these things are always changing under the direction of Krishna. But those substances are Krishna's energies, and Krishna's energies are eternal. So where's the Maya? So it's not that they're illusion. The illusion is how we see these things. The illusion is not the actual things themselves, it's how we see them. So all of the things in this world can be seen as Maya or seen as Krishna consciousness, seen in Krishna consciousness based on how we identify them. Are they mine, or are they the ever-changing devotional service that I'm going through in this material world? For example, the Varnashram system. One starts off as a brahmachari. Likelihood is he will not stay a brahmachari forever. So he starts off as a brahmachari. In that brahmachari life, what is he doing? He's doing devotional service. He's hearing, he's chanting, he's doing spiritual practices, he's going out and teaching spiritual knowledge. But this is still temporary, correct? Because he's going to change. So then at the changing point, he gets married. Now he's engaged in family life. He has a wife, he has children, he's working in the world. So many material things are happening. But we understand that those things are not eternal, correct? They're going to change. And at a certain point, all of that's going to fade away. He's going to have to take vanaprast, ideally, and begin to practice austerities and practices of spiritual life once again. And then at a certain point, that phase will pass, and he'll take sannyas, and then this body will pass away and move on to the next phase of this existence. So all of those things are temporary, but what do we have for a devotee? What's common about all of them? What is the common theme about all 4 of those positions for a devotee? Exactly. So it's not that the marriage is Maya, the ashram is Maya, the wife is Maya, the children are Maya. That's not the case. It's how we see them. When we see them as my children, my wife, my house, my car, my circumstances, all of those things become Maya. All of those things are elusive because they're not yours, because you've never owned them in the first place, and they're going to be taken away from you without your control. They belong to Krishna. Therefore, in that consciousness, they are Maya. But when one sees everything in relation to Krishna, the ever-changing devotional service, that I'm doing one service now, and I'll soon be doing another service, and I'll soon be doing another service. And at the time of death, I'm simply changing my service. Ideally, I'll be going to do a service in the spiritual world with Krishna. But in any case, I'm serving Krishna. And therefore, a devotee who sees on the platform a devotional service, there is no Maya, no matter what his position is. So the word yukta vairagya is a misunderstood term so much of the time. Yukta vairagya means to use everything in the service of Krishna. But sometimes people confuse that with dovetailing. The dovetailing means that I have a very serious material attachment, such as to the senses. And I have to use that now in Krishna's service. That's dovetailing. That's called karma yoga. Karma mishra bhakti. That means I have some desire. Let me at least offer it to Krishna. Let me at least do that desire and offer it to Krishna. Krishna says, like you recorded this verse yesterday, Yat karosi yadashnasi yaj jahosi tadasi yat tapasyasi konteya tat karosa mararpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you offer, give away, whatever charity you perform, whatever austerities you do that as an offering to me. So the principle of karma yoga is that we do something and we offer it to Krishna, rather than being attached to the fruits. We're offering those fruits to Krishna. We cultivate detachment, but we're attached to the work. I'm not picking on grihastas. It's just a very good example. Just a very easy example so much of the time, is that someone gets married, not because of devotional service, but because they're attached to associating with the opposite sex. So they're attached to the work of grihasta life. They're attached to that work, but they use that work by offering the children to Krishna. So they raise the children in Krishna consciousness. And when you laugh, they raise the children in, They raise the children. They raise the children in Krishna consciousness. They make nice devotees. We don't mean human sacrificing. Right? They make nice devotees, and they raise these children to be in God consciousness. Therefore, that process of associating with the opposite gender is being used and dovetailed in Krishna's service. Yukta vairagya, on the other hand, means, in the way that Srila Prabhupada, everything in his purview was paraphernalia for God's service, and his only attachment was God's service. And so that's a different thing altogether. He's not attached to this and therefore going to offer it to Krishna. He's attached to Krishna, and everything that is valuable and favorable for his service to Krishna, he's now offering to Krishna. So there's a difference. And so pleasing Krishna is the principle of real yukta vairagya. So with that all being said, what this verse is stating is that without loving devotional friendship and service to Krishna, without this loving connection with God, which is established through the practices of spiritual life, bhakti yoga, without these practices and this consciousness, all of the things we're doing are ultimately shrama eva kevalam, they're useless. And so in the Bhagavatam, there's a verse spoken by Krishna to Brahma in the 2nd canto, 9th chapter, verse number 34, I believe. Vertertam yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani tadvidyadat manomaya yata baso yata tamaha. And this is Krishna saying that, O Lord Brahma, whatever there is in existence, if you don't see it in connection to me, the center of existence, then know it to be my illusory energy. It's illusion. It's actually a reflection of ignorance and darkness. So a devotee sees everything in how it's related to Krishna, and Krishna gives us a practical way of understanding that in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, I am the taste of water. I am the light of the sun and the moon. He gives us so many examples. I am the original fragrance of the earth. So there's so many things we see. Krishna is the fire of digestion. He's the light that makes the trees go, and the moon that nourishes the vegetables. So in this way, we can see Krishna everywhere. This is the beginning phase. So therefore, when we see something that's not attached to Krishna, when we're acting in a way that's not serving the whole, we're separating our consciousness from the supreme consciousness, and therefore we have to suffer. Good example is that of a cancer cell. Cells are all working together. There's trillions and trillions of cells in the body, so many different cells. When a cell decides to go rogue and do its own thing, it's called a cancer. And then the body destroys that cell, ideally, if your immune system is good. And so in the same way, when a living entity works out of unity and out of alliance with the supreme will, and that living entity has to face so many karmas, whether they're good or bad, to correct them and put them back on track. So there's another thing I want to speak about in regards to this, and I just want to tell some examples of this. There's so many great examples of how Lord Chaitanya is not pleased, Krishna is not pleased by any of these things without this devotional, without this love. Krishna is ultimately pleased by love, loving devotional service. So the most prominent example, at least in my mind, is of the brahmachari, whom was desiring to associate with the Lord Chaitanya, Krishna in his form as Lord Chaitanya. He was desiring very deeply to associate with the Lord. And he was wanting to go into the kirtan of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya, every night in the house of Srivas Thakur, was having ecstatic kirtans wherein they would chant Hare Krishna and they would dance, and wonderful, miraculous things would happen because they're chanting in the Lord's presence. And so this devotee very deeply wanted to, or this brahmachari, he very deeply wanted to join the kirtan of the Lord. And he was very, very austere. He used to sleep on the floor. He used to drink only milk. This was all he drank. And he was very, very austere. So he pled with Srivas, the owner of the home in which Lord Chaitanya would perform kirtan. He pled with him, please let me come into the kirtan. I want to see the Lord dancing. I want to have vision. I want to have darshan of the Lord. And so he prayed in that way. And Srivas Thakur felt compassion and said, okay, you can come, but you can't be seen. I don't want anybody to see you because Lord Chaitanya didn't invite you to the kirtan. So come and you can look at the Lord, but just hide. And so the time came for Lord Chaitanya to perform kirtan. They locked the doors, and then the mridangas and the kartels started. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And the Lord began chanting and began dancing. But he started to notice, I'm not feeling very blissful. Why am I not feeling blissful? And he started to notice, there's someone here that's not a pure devotee. Who's here that's not a pure devotee? Of course, Lord Chaitanya is all-knowing. He's playing like he didn't know. There's someone here that's not a pure devotee. He said, Srivas, who's here? Who are you hiding? And the brahmachari came out. Lord Chaitanya became very furious, actually. He said, who do you think you are sneaking into my kirtans? Do you think that you're qualified to come into this kirtan just because you're austere? Just because you drink only milk and you sleep on the floor? Do you think that this pleases me in any way? So Lord Chaitanya said, get out of here. It seems kind of harsh, but Lord Chaitanya later on spoke to that brahmachari and said, he actually had an instructive conversation with him. He said that it's not by the means of just being an austere person that pleases God. Because we know that the most austere people are the materialists. Who's the most austere person who ever lived? Did you say it, Vanessa? Hiranyakashipu is the most austere person who ever lived. No one performed austerities like Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu's austerities were insane. And so even a materialist can perform austerities, and we see that sometimes the materialists are working 4 or 5 jobs. I know one story of Govinda Das Prabhu told me he knows a man in Los Angeles who worked 3 jobs. And he said, I only have to work 24 hours one day. And he's just renting a small single room in someone's house. That's how insane the prices are in LA. So he says, I work 3 jobs, but I only work 24 hours one day of the week. So this is an insane austerity, no? He's taking austerities for his materialistic life. So materialists are performing so many austerities also. So these austerities are not in themselves. Severe austerities, the process of hearing the power of speech, mental speculation. Sometimes people come to the temple so much of the time and they're very expert mental speculators. Or they have so many theories about what the absolute truth is, and they come to tell you their theories. They say, oh, I'm God, you're God. They say, actually, this is the way, or actually, it's all light. They have all these things they make up. and they hear from other speculators. In this way, they form their own spiritual belief system. But if those things don't actually develop that love and that change and that transformation of character, which is a direct result of bhakti yoga, if those transformational elements don't take place, which come from bhakti, then those things are useless. So that's one example. Another example is Ram Das Vishwas. Who here knows who Ram Das Vishwas is? Anybody? You know? Oh, no, not that Ram Das. Yeah, this is a Ram Das that's 500 years older than that Ram Das. There's a lot of Ram Dases. Ram Das Vishwas was one Brahmana who accompanied Raghunath Bhatta Goswami from West Bengal to Jagannath Puri. When Raghunath Das Goswami was going to see Lord Chaitanya in Jagannath Puri, he was coming from West Bengal down to Jagannath Puri, down to Orissa. And he was accompanied by one Brahmana, Ram Das Vishwas. And Ram Das Vishwas constantly chanted the name of Ram. He was always chanting Ram, 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 constantly, fully absorbed in the name of chanting Ram. And he was such a humble servant of Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. He would always just serve him. He was always, oh, let me serve you. Just like we want to be a great servant. He was always trying to serve Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. And so when they came to Jagannath Puri, when Lord Chaitanya saw Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Lord Chaitanya ran to him and embraced him. Lord Chaitanya was embracing him. My dear devotee, thank you so much for coming to see me. And Lord Chaitanya wouldn't even look at Ram Das Vishwas. Even though Ram Das Vishwas apparently was absorbed in chanting the holy name and absorbed in serving the Vaishnavas, Lord Chaitanya wouldn't look at him. And so finally the devotees asked, my dear Lord, why is it that you're ignoring Ram Das Vishwas? He's fully absorbed in chanting your names and serving the devotees. And Lord Chaitanya said, he wants to be Ram. He doesn't want to serve Ram. He's serving my devotees to be Ram, to be like Krishna, not to serve Krishna. Therefore, I have no interest. So even our spiritual activities, if they're done in a way that's amplifying our false ego up to the point of being God, they're shramayam kevalam, they're useless, unless they're done in that mood of direct devotional service. So once again, we're coming to the main point here that really Lord Chaitanya and Krishna, they're super pleased by pure chanting. Another great example in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is Vallabhacharya. So Vallabhacharya is very famous guru, an acharya of the Pushti Marg, who are very prominent in Vrindavan. The Banki Bihari temple, which Chakravarti was saying he had just visited, and many other temples in Vrindavan are followers of Vallabhacharya. And so Vallabhacharya, at one point, he was feeling himself very learned. And he decided to write a commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he kept trying to share his commentaries with Gadadhar Pandit. And Gadadhar Pandit was really, trying to avoid him because his commentaries were done in a very arrogant way. And he was actually stating that he had surpassed Sridhar Swami, the original commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam. And so he actually, eventually he forced Gadadhar Pandit to hear his commentaries. And Gadadhar Pandit was really thinking, I don't want the devotees to see that I'm associating with this guy. And we see some human element in the devotees, so we don't got to be like robots. Sometimes people think, oh, the devotees, no, they're humans. So even Gadadhar Pandit saying, I don't want to be seen with this guy. Come on, I don't want to be seen with this guy. So it's nice to see that when you read the CC, you see the human elements of all Lord Chaitanya's devotees. And so eventually it came that Vallabhacharya approached Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya kept rejecting him, kept avoiding him. Finally, he said, actually, my commentary is surpassing that of Sridhar Swami. And Lord Chaitanya said, then I consider you like a prostitute because you're not following the footsteps of humility and learning from the previous teachers. and just in your own mind and your own learning. In this way, he actually reformed Vallabhacharya, and Vallabhacharya did become a great devotee. But you see, Lord Chaitanya is pleased by very specific things: humility, pridelessness, the chanting of the holy name in a very pure way. And in a similar way, King Prachaparudra, who was a very, very powerful devotee of the Lord and very, very devoted to Krishna, Prachaparudra Maharaj desired to see Lord Chaitanya so much, but Lord Chaitanya, being a sannyasi, playing the role of sannyasi, would not speak to a king because sannyasis and kings generally don't interact. And so, how did Prachaparudra please Lord Chaitanya? Well, first and foremost, the thing he did was he took the humble position of sweeping in front of the Rath Yatra cart. And Lord Chaitanya felt this is very humble service for a king. So Lord Chaitanya was pleased with him. And Lord Chaitanya was actually, when Lord Chaitanya expanded himself to dance with every kirtan party, only certain devotees can see the miracle that Lord Chaitanya was dancing in so many places simultaneously. And Prachaparudra got that vision to be able to see that Lord Chaitanya is everywhere. And so then later on, when Lord Chaitanya began to rest during the middle of the Rath Yatra, Prachaparudra Maharaj dressed as a humble Vaishnava, even though he's a king, and he went and he began to chant the prayers of the gopis, Tavakatamritam Tapta Jivanam. And so he chanted these beautiful prayers to Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya became so blissed out in hearing these nice prayers. He was pleased and he gave full mercy to Prachaparudra Maharaj. So we're seeing in a different way that Prachaparudra Maharaj, although being a king, by the process of pure hearing and chanting of the holy name and chanting the Bhagavatam, he was able to please Lord Chaitanya. And final example we'll say is that Srivasacharya, he was a householder. He had children, many children actually. So he wasn't a renunciate, he wasn't a monk, he wasn't a brahmachari, he was a householder. Yet he pleased Lord Chaitanya so much, he was actually the dearest associate of Lord Chaitanya, one of the Panchatattva, sing his name every day. And this is because, why? Because he was fully absorbed in the chanting of Hare Krishna. And so Lord Chaitanya, after he took sannyasi, went back to Bengal. And when he went back to Bengal, he stopped at the house of Srivasacharya. He saw his mother, Sachi Devi, and he stopped at the house of Srivasacharya. And Lord Chaitanya said, Srivas, you don't work. You don't have a job. All you do is chant all day. You just do kirtan all day long. And you have all these kids. How do you support yourself? Srivas said, Krishna provides everything. He said, if I have no lack in my life. I have everything in abundance. And he says, if I clap my hands 3 times and somehow I don't have anything, I'll drown myself in the Ganges because it must mean I displeased Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya was so pleased with the surrender and the dedication that Srivas understood that I'm chanting the holy name and therefore everything is coming. Lord Chaitanya said, Lakshmi Devi will starve before your house has no food. So in this way, Lord Chaitanya is pleased by the hearing and chanting. So we may find ourselves in so many material activities, but the bhakti principle is that throughout all those activities, if we can become attached to chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna says, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu, mam anusmaran yudaja maya pritamana budhir mam eva shashasham sayaha. Then that chanting, that remembering Krishna while we're doing our work, whatever it is, whatever our work may be contaminated or not, if we just remember Krishna through it by seriously chanting Hare Krishna, then we're going to be transcendental and we'll go to Krishna. With that being said, I have 10 to 15 minutes here. I want to really get into this. I've been reading this book, the Gayatri book by Satchidananda Maharaj. And every book I read by Satchidananda Swami is just so good. I mean, he really writes amazing books. They're all very easy to read and they're very practical and they're very full of nectar. And so I've been wanting to read this book a long time. And it's really helping my Gayatri. I really feel like my Gayatri is super inspiring now because of this. It's like really giving deep understanding and really just, wow, really great. So this is about rising to the platform of Sattva Gun. we can't really, or mode of goodness. It's very difficult to be a devotee unless we come to the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness is the consciousness by which we are able to really uplift ourselves in Krishna consciousness. So, in order to really do sadhana and chant Hare Krishna nicely, we should chant Hare Krishna in the mode of goodness. So there's a verse here, I'll just read. One essential step toward becoming a true Brahmana, a person situated in transcendence, is to learn to live in the mode of goodness. In his teachings, the Uddhava, Krishna states, a person who has received direct knowledge of the eternal soul will easily drive away the illusion of identifying with the material body and mind. The wrong identification with the body and mind is caused by the three modes of nature. Therefore, as long as one has not yet attained the transcendental stage where one directly perceives the soul, one must cultivate a life in goodness. So in other words, unless we're fully enlightened Brahmabhuta, we have to cultivate a life in goodness. The reason is that by increasing the mode of goodness, one automatically can understand the practice of religious principles, and by such practice, one transcends the knowledge, one becomes transcendental and knowledge is awakened. So in other words, it's easy to rise from the mode of goodness to the mode of pure goodness. So, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur explains that there are 5 powerful obstacles which keep one locked in the lower modes. And I just think they're very powerful to learn about and to understand. First one is Laya, the tendency to sleep during chanting, hearing, and remembering. Obstacle number 1. Vikshepa, distraction which prevents one from becoming absorbed in chanting. Apratipati, chronic lack of enthusiasm, which prevents one from performing devotional service even when not troubled by sleepiness or distraction. Kashaya, the reappearance of old habits such as anger, greed, and pride during one's practice of hearing and chanting. Rasa Vada, having no taste for rasa, the blissful mellows experienced in a transcendental relationship with Sri Krishna. So these are 5 obstacles which are born from the Tama and Rajagun that affect our ability to truly chant Hare Krishna. The first one obviously being sleeping, and I struggled with that for so many years. Sleeping during chanting, hearing, and remembering. I struggled with that for many, many years. But if we really cultivate mode of goodness and we take shelter in the Vaishnavas very humbly, then we can overcome it. That's my experience. Having that desire and forcing myself over the years with great determination has helped me. I very rarely fall asleep if I'm chanting now or in Bhagavatam class. Distraction. Distraction is the biggest killer of devotional service, so much of how distraction is one of the real 12, there's 11 offenses if you count chanting unattentively, but the 12th offense is to have your phone near you during japa. That's an offense to the holy name. And actually, if you think about it, offenses, it's actually you're offending Krishna, your well-wisher and friend. Why would you want to do that? So the distractions can come from many things. If we're trying to do a japa walk, we can be looking at so many things, hearing so many things. So distraction. One of the things that both of these are, is how we're cultivating goodness. First is, if we go to bed on time, then you can wake up on time with full energy, and then you can chant Hare Krishna nicely. When I first moved into the temple, Ananta was telling me the importance of coming to Mangal Artik every day. And one of the things he told me was that the challenge is not waking up early, the challenge is going to bed on time. You remember that, Prabhu? You said that to me. That's parampara. So distraction which prevents one from becoming absorbed in chanting. And so distraction, one of the ways we stop distraction is by chanting japa in the time and place where there's no distractions. That's why we get up early to chant. We have morning here, Tulsi is out, devotees are chanting. It's a great time to chant. and not be distracted. And if you sleep during your japa period, or if you're becoming distracted by so many things during that time, then you're going to be trying to chant in the time where there's so much distractions. That's why if I have to chant for some reason in the day, I leave the temple because there's too many distractions. I usually go to the church and chant. I go to the either the cathedral where Ganga Mantri lives, or the other one down by the Food for Life. Both those Catholic churches, and they're great in the summer because they're both air conditioned. Yeah, they're great places to chant. Peaceful, quiet. Ganga Mantri also chants his japa in the church down there a lot. Usually not. Usually they're all empty. Sometimes you may see someone in there. Sometimes the big one, there's like weddings and stuff. Sometimes you got to get out of there. Aprapti pati, chronic lack of enthusiasm, which prevents one from performing devotional service. Even when not troubled by sleepiness or distraction. So I'm not distracted, I'm not sleepy, but I'm just not enthused to perform devotional service. And so what is the thing that causes lack of enthusiasm? How do we gain enthusiasm? We have to associate with devotees who are enthusiastic. And we have to desire to be enthusiastic. If we want to become successful in Krishna consciousness, you have to have some desire to want to serve Krishna. And so if you don't have the desire, then nothing works. This world is run on desire. So if you don't have that desire, then you're just obstinate. You're going to suffer. But if you have some desire to serve Krishna, then you can, consciously say, I'm going to associate with this devotee. He's very enthusiastic. And, when I first came to the temple, I remember thinking, I was really impressed by the devotees getting up early. It just blew my mind when I first met devotees. And so Mother Sundamani at that point was the earliest bird I ever met. And so I thought, I want to be like her. And so I started chanting japa. First day at the temple, I woke up like 3 and started chanting, and I really kept that practice mostly my entire time at the temple. Although now I get up around between 2 and 2:20. But anyways, it doesn't have to be super, super early, but before breakfast, it's nice to have most of your rounds chanted. Kashaya, the reappearance of old habits such as anger, greed, and pride during one's practice of hearing and chanting. I deal with this. Sometimes, as you advance in Krishna consciousness, you start to think, I'm very, I'm getting elevated, and you become prideful, disrespect pride, you become angry, then you make offenses, and you want, all the prasadam. And then rasavada, having no taste for rasa, the blissful mellows experienced in a transcendental relationship with Krishna. If we have no taste for actually wanting to have a relationship with Krishna and living in that relationship and being with Krishna, then we won't desire to go deeper into our chanting. And so these things are resultant of the mode of ignorance and the mode of passion. And they are very destructive to our devotional life and to our practice of Krishna consciousness. With that being said, the Bhagavatam gives us some special knowledge on how to overcome rajas and tamas. And the main thing is, it says, Shrinvata swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyanta stoya badrani vidanoti saritsatam. That if you hear the Bhagavatam nicely, and you develop a desire to hear the Bhagavatam, like, devotees here and never miss class. It's very nice if you can never miss class, as little as possible. Because that desire to hear the Bhagavatam what Bhagavatam says is Krishna is in our heart, and he will cleanse the desire for material enjoyment from our heart. When we've developed the desire to hear and chant his messages, which are in themselves virtuous, then you develop punya. So by doing that, it's described later on, Tada rajas tamo bhava kamalobadayaschaye cheta etirnavidam stitam sattve prasidati. That in time, in the practice of hearing, if you read every day as a sadhana, let me read something every day. Let me write my goal down and let me read something every day. Then tada rajas tamo bhava kamalobadayaschaye. Then the influence of tamas and the influence of rajas, they go away. Kama labadashya, the influence of kama, lust, and the influence of greed go away. Cheta etir navidam, and then the mind, the chit is being cleared. Cheta etir navidam, the mind becomes cleared. Stitvam sattve prasidati, and one becomes situated in goodness, sattve prasidati, and he becomes happy. So we can become happy when we're in the mode of goodness, even if we're not on the transcendental stage. Still, we're actually conditioned by happiness if you're in the mode of goodness. Stitam sattve prasidati, and then from that stage, one develops even deeper Krishna consciousness, and one can develop bhava when that pure goodness sets in. That's described as evam prasana manaso. The mind becomes totally enlightened and enlivened by the contact with Krishna, this factual contact with Krishna. Evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha, because he's seriously performing bhakti yoga. Bhagavat tattva vijnana, and he develops scientific knowledge of Krishna. It means there's no doubt anymore. He has scientific vijnana. He's realized God in completeness. In mukta sangas sajayate, person is completely liberated from material associations. He's completely detached from all the lower modes of nature. So all this is coming from the process of hearing and chanting nicely. And so all of these things are meaningless without this devotional service attached to them. You know, when we do work, we work for Krishna. When we speak about Krishna, or we speak about our services and the devotees and things related to Krishna. When we think, we don't speculate. We're thinking about how to understand the absolute truth, and we're thinking about how these instructions, how the scriptures are giving us something to think about. That's one of the things about, I give a lot of classes by Krishna's grace. I'm always getting to think about, what am I going to speak about, and what did I read today, and how am I going to speak this? And also, whenever we're going through something in life, it's like you have a guidebook. You just open Bhagavad Gita and you start thinking about shlokas, and you have a shloka, or Bhagavatam, and you start applying it. And then you can use that in a class. I always just give class in Krishna Cove or Sunday Feast on what I'm thinking about at that current time, because we don't have to speculate. We don't have to think. You're either speculating, or if you're on a lower level, you're thinking about how you're going to get sense gratification, or if you're on an even lower level, you're just lazy. And you're just like, let me have food and, a place to sleep, and I'll just do whatever you want. But the devotee, he's thinking, oh, that was a really nice statement. How do I use that? How do I apply that? He's thinking like that. And therefore, he's using that power of mental speculation in the service of Krishna. Elevated intelligence. We're getting elevated intelligence. Strength. Use your strength in Krishna's service. And the power of the senses. We have full power of the senses. We can do so many services. Use them in Krishna's service. And in this way, everything becomes fully enlivened and enlightened. So I think we'll stop there. It was a nice, fun little sharing. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions? I'll leave that for you.
So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the difference between just like the regular mode of goodness and then the pure mode of goodness.
Yeah. So the pure mode of goodness is characterized by, it's not influenced by any passion or ignorance. The regular mode of goodness is conditioning one to a sense of happiness. Prabhupada or Krishna explains that it's conditioned to happiness. The mode of ignorance conditions one to laziness, sleep, and madness, an illusion. The mode of passion conditions one to fruitive activities, of which misery is the result always. The mode of goodness conditions one to a sense of happiness and knowledge. And what is that knowledge? That people in the mode of goodness generally understand about this body, and they're generally pretty happy, but they're not necessarily engaged in the service of the Lord. And therefore, they tend to think that they're better than others. Prabhupada explains that in the purport, that the people in the mode of goodness, they tend to think that because they're happy and they're full of knowledge, they're superior. And in this way, they fall back down. And we see that sometimes, people are like, very critical of anybody who's, a so-called non-devotee, or so-called, the worst word, karmi. They use these terms like that. And in that way, one is conditioned. This is like the Brahmana class of, the mundane caste Brahmanas, that they feel they're better by birth. So many things, our lifestyle's better. And so in that way, one is not on the transcendental stage where they're seeing everybody as a part and parcel of Krishna and serving Krishna completely. Someone in the pure mode of goodness is simple, that every thought, word, and action is used in the service of Krishna. And there's a nice verse in the 4th canto where Lord Shiva explains that he's always in the state of Vasudev Sattva. He's always in the state of Vasudev consciousness. And in that state, he's always thinking of Krishna. You know the verse about that? It's one of your favorite verses.
Yeah.
You know,
In the Sanskrit, it says he sees Krishna without any covering, because he's always in this certain Vasudev state, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So Lord Shiva says, I'm always thinking, I'm always fully absorbed in the thought of Krishna. Action, words, and body, mind, and words, all used in the service of Krishna. And that way we can guarantee we're in the mode of pure goodness. And body, mind, and words are used in the service of Krishna. So that means we got to give up all of our ulterior motives. Any other questions? Dasa?
How can we propel our concentration to become more enlivened, more enthusiastic?
I like what Vishnu John Swami said. I always think of that and I apply it. Like, if you want to become enthusiastic, act enthusiastically.
Fake it till you make it.
Really,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're just like, just get up there and be enthusiastic. It's not very enthusiastic. Actually, the word enthusiasm means to be filled with God and theos. You're filled with like the Holy Spirit. And so that's a real experience. Devotees, they feel like, yeah, I'm chanting my rounds. I'm super joyful. And, we're filled up with that Holy Spirit. But in the other sense of things, that if we don't feel filled up, we have to act in such a way that will get us filled up. And so, when we have a very strong philosophical understanding that, everything in the material world, all of these things that we're doing to serve our senses are totally useless. And that if I serve Krishna, I get to go back to Godhead, which is a very beautiful thing. And I get to be happy in this life. That should give you some enthusiasm. It's pretty positive life. The devotee life is the most positive. So that'll give us enthusiasm. We think about the goal and we think about, our guru, and we think about these things, we contemplate, and that gives us enthusiasm. Give us enthusiasm. Okay, Chandrika, last one.
I was thinking about like in Vastu, there's so many different aspects of your life, whether it's, career, your relationships, your health, etc., finance, everything, and just all the elements. So when we're chanting, chanting japa and chanting, it's almost like purifying every aspect of your life and your life in connection with Krishna. So just feeling that enthusiasm, just knowing that everything in chanting is actually affecting everything in your life, and knowing how pure and loving that is.
Yeah, and the best way to develop enthusiasm for chanting is to just chant. Like get a taste for it. Yeah, I sit down every morning. Japa is my favorite part of the day, hands down. Every day, it's my favorite thing I do every day. I love it.
Too.
And when you do it, you develop taste for it. And Mahatma Prabhu says this in his book. That if we, sometimes we have a bad experience with japa, we get in the habit of doing, offenses and being not chanting nicely. And so then when we pick up our beads, it's not like an enthusing experience, it's a disenthusing experience. So therefore we have to change the mindset. And, ideally you train your consciousness to that when your hand touches your beads, you almost immediately go into that state of everything else doesn't matter, only Krishna matters. And that's how we want to have our bead bag. We want it to be a thing that when we touch, nothing else matters. And that we train our mind in that. We train our consciousness in that. And so the first affirmation, I think, in Mahatma Prabhu's #1 japa affirmations book is, I wholeheartedly welcome the holy name into my life, or something like that. I forget. But the idea is that we're welcoming the holy name. It's not like we want to look at it as this is a great opportunity to chant Hare Krishna. Or he has one, I want to chant, I get to chant, I love to chant. And so, rather than thinking like, oh, I got to chant my rounds, I have so many rounds to chant, I'm feeling tired. I want to chant. I get to chant. I love to chant. It's an opportunity to chant. It's such a blissful opportunity to get to chant Hare Krishna. How many souls get to chant Hare Krishna? Very few. And so in that way, we pick up our bag. I want to chant. I get to chant. I love to chant. And so when these things go deep in our minds, then we become enthusiastic about chanting and it transforms our life. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. I'll go.
Hare Krishna.